when you go to Africa, because you were talking about Africa before, the reality is extremely complex, like at every
Oof.
level, meaning that producer, to give you an example, the same producer that I was telling you is like, I would love to tell you cacao. And I'm very happy to buy cacao to this producer. But for me, to buy cacao to this producer, it means that we're going to pass for 10 persons. So I
Mm.
cannot give the money to this person because he need to give the cacao to the coyote, and the coyote already trick his his scale, sorry. And then the cooperative is already another relationship with this person. And then the truck bringing the cacao to the warehouse, and then in the warehouse, and you lose the faith sometimes.
On June 9 and 10 this year, our live online workshop, Biochar for Farming, is happening in English and Spanish with returning specialist professors Angela Barrero and Morillo Bettarello. Tickets are $10 for farmers and $100 for everybody else, which includes 9 pay-it-forward tickets for farmers who can't pay the ticket price. Head to mapitforward.coffee/workshops or check the show notes for links. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 2 of a 5-part series with César Magaña from Belco, the Director of Cacao at Belco. And we're talking about the cacao industry in 2025 and all the volatility that's coming with it. There are a lot of parallels between what's going on in cacao and what's going on in coffee. And in the last episode, we talked about where the volatility is coming from in cacao. And I'm starting to get the feeling, Cesar, that the volatility that's happening in cacao and the ambiguity around that, people have a lot of stories that they're telling in the press and on Bloomberg and all of these kinds of things. The same way that they're saying with coffee.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we really don't know. And that was kind of what I took from the last episode. Am I correct there?
What I'm sure is like we are repeating what we are reading again and again. And sometimes it's like you ask AI, like, okay, tell me why
Right.
we have a volatility in cacao, and AI gives you the answer, and the answer is there. And then you open the TV is there, and you open your computer is there,
Right.
your telephone is
So we
there.
keep perpetuating it.
Yeah.
Okay, then I have a question, because in this episode, we're going to talk about the humans involved in the production of cacao. But before we talk about the humans, I want to ask you, one of the stories that has been constantly told and is like hot on Bloomberg, particularly right now, is this story about the mites that infested the cacao farms all over the Ivory Coast and destroyed the cacao trees. Do you know if that's true?
I mean, for sure. But it's not the only reason. I mean, this is the
Right,
consequence again of something that we didn't do. Like
right,
why the coffee rust is so important in coffee for coffee people. It's because we
right.
have too many plants of coffee who are susceptible, in everywhere is the same. So of course you get one plant with the little thing, and everything is gonna be there.
Yeah, right.
And in cacao, if you have weak plants and you have not protected plants from the sun, and you have not protect, and you don't have the system, the environment that the cacao needs, and you don't put the attention to produce cacao with
Mm-hmm.
other products. I mean, in the moment that you only produce cacao, first of all, your level of risk is so high, because
Mm.
like any other product, you depend of seasons, you depend of
Mm-hmm.
the same client, you depend of so many factors that put you at risk. And I know it's very easy to say and very hard to do, especially when you work the land. But agriculture, as we know it right now, is super risky, because we are focusing, I produce cacao, so I'm a specialist in cacao. And remember,
Monocropping.
high quality cacao is a product that is not only produced, it's also transformed a lot of the
Mm.
time for the producer. So we are asking to the producer to be economist, to be
A
agronomist,
scientist?
scientist, to be guru, to be everything, and it's just not possible. And at the same time, we are pushing we need more cacao. So you need to produce more cacao. And that means the way that cacao is produced today is just put the production sector in a very high risk, meaning that then you are coming back to Africa because this is the place that everybody's talking about meats or virus or fungus or plants who are not healthy, and everything together is just a bomb. That yes, of course, there is less cacao produced, but all of the reason what the cacao is produced, there is no one reason. You can point, okay, that's the reason. The reason is people planting cacao, they don't even know sometimes how the cacao is being used. They don't have any particular attachment to this fruit. That is not the money that they get paid in the end of the day after recollection. No, the motivation to produce cacao is not always there. And when you are, as a human being, not motivated for something, it's even weaker. It's all the strain that can give you like, okay, but this doesn't work. I move to another thing. You're not thinking like that. Just a year ago, people were getting paid $2,000 per ton. That's what we know. So that's not even real, because the $2,000 ton is the price that we know that the market is saying, but you need to move that cacao, you need to dry that cacao, you need to warehouse that cacao. Then the 2,000, maybe you are losing money for sure, and maybe we are still losing, but losing less. So the way that the production area is being treated, it's just not fair at all. So that's the base of the way that we are working right now. We are working with a big amount of cacao producers in the world that they don't really know what they are doing. And that's quite a mission for us to, I would not say to change, but to be part of the change. Like, we need to be focused, and like when a person understands what he's doing, it's a big chances of the things are going to change. So this thing that cacao right now is not enough, or we lose a lot of the crop last year. Okay, there is less cacao and the consume is going up. Yes, a reality. And there is less cacao because there is a virus, because there is fungus, because there is dry, because there is too much rain, because there is meat. Everything is true. And it's been there for years and years and years. And the crisis arrived as a consequence of we never put attention in. There is many people who've been saying like, hey, guys, that's going to happen. There's people saying it and experts saying it. Hey, that's going to happen to you. It's like people is not doing anything. It's just, okay, it's going to happen, Okay, so now happened. And the crazy thing is like, can be worse. We cannot say like, okay, that was the peak of how many euros and that was the worst. We don't know, because it's also not real. There is a lot of speculation for many powers, many sectors in the middle of the situation. And the speculation, for me, as far as I understand, is something that is not real. When you speculate, it's a ghost, It's like, okay, so even when now we are talking about news that you read or things that you hear, and then in the last month, for example, the big news is like big companies, they're going to stop using cacao in their formula, and right now they use less cacao. You don't know if it's the real news and it's for real business for that company, or the news, somebody behind the news make it bigger, because that could put the cacao down for a couple of minutes, and in that 2 minutes, somebody's going to click and make money.
So for people who don't understand that, the same thing's happening in coffee, right? You guys may see that there are consultants out there and there are journalists out there that put out reports, and they say, the production and the yield in Brazil is expected to go down in the next harvest. And, it's like 9 months away. So how the fuck can anybody know what's actually going to happen in 9 months from now? But all of that, there are times, and it is, we all know that this happens. Those reports are paid for, and they are paid for to facilitate specific trades done by speculators. So what will happen there is that as that report comes down, if you watch the commodities market, the futures market, you will see that right before that, the price was low. People bought when the price was low. This report comes out and the price spikes. And so then they sell their contracts. And they've made millions, maybe billions in the process of doing that. That's the kind of market manipulation that you see in coffee and you see in cacao. And this is why when we were saying in the last episode about price stability, right? It would be great for producers if there wasn't this fuckery taking place. And there was stable pricing, but it doesn't work for other people. And so when we talk about like who are the humans involved in the production of cacao, that's the actual cacao supply chain. We have a cacao supply chain, we have a coffee supply chain, but there is a shadow industry, and we've talked about it on this podcast a couple of times. There's a whole shadow cacao industry and coffee industry that benefits so much. It's a kind of a symbiotic parasitic relationship that exists between the actual supply chain and the shadow supply chain. They need the cacao supply chain to exist so that they have a toy to play with. They have a way, a vessel, a mechanism to make their billions of dollars, but they just feed the producers their scraps and make sure that they keep enabling the existence of this market. These are the people who are not actually involved in the production of cacao, but they are the people who benefit from the production.
I mean,
of cacao.
you can make business from cacao without don't understand anything. Like, it's a ghost. Like you are dealing with something that doesn't.
It's gambling, though.
Yeah, it's you are putting money. You are betting with something that doesn't exist, and you don't really care about cacao. Who is producing, who is using it? You are just interested in the game. I'm not expert in that, but I know that exists, and sadly, I know that exists because it becomes really important right now. And it was always important, actually. Like, you cannot work in cacao and assume that the market doesn't exist, because everybody is impacted. And I can tell you the example of a producer in Colombia, for example. Like, this person has been producing cacao for 10 years or 20 years. And every time that this person produces cacao, he get like $1, per kilo, to give you an idea of something realistic 5 years ago. So this person is used to it today. $1, $1.
Right.
So I love specialty cacao. So for me, please, you put it in special bags, you dry it in a special way, you ferment in a special way, and please avoid the insect, because there is insect. And the whole thing is that the beautiful word, and I can pay you $2, to give you an example. So I paid twice, right? Then I become really interesting for this person, because I'm the buyer, no? I'm getting there to buy cacao, and I put value in the thing. So that's a specialty cacao in a very simplistic way. This is
and we're gonna explore specialty cacao in the next episode at depth, so people can. I am deliberately stopping you there, so that we don't go into that.
I hear you.
But what I want to ask you about that, you just mentioned something. Go on.
Just
please.
To keep my point and don't leave it like that. Is like what happened with this ghost market, with the speculation,
right?
With this dryness in Africa, or when this virus, or when this insects, or with this fungus, and then like nothing changed. It's from one day to another. The price of the cacao does like boom, 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 boom. This producer, tomorrow, he can sell his cacao for $8. So we are not talking about specialty cacao, but quality is the first thing, or one of the first things who actually suffer. Who cares about making quality? I'm gonna get paid $8. And
all right.
So me as an actor, and now I'm talking about my life, my routine, daily life, that we are trying to build this something very structured and fair, and the whole beautiful story. I need to understand what's happening in the market, and sometimes, and a lot of the times, it's very hard to explain because the minds playing with these things are not in our face, or maybe they're too in our face. I don't know, but they are not in our face. But because there is no logic, this jump of price is not logic.
The part that fucks with me is I don't know when we're being manipulated now and when we're not. I don't know when producers are being manipulated and when they're not. I don't know what is real and what isn't real. I mean, okay, we could have a philosophical conversation about how that's happening with everything in the world right now. But if we keep it about cacao and we keep it about coffee, these two things are running in tandem where everybody that is involved in the production of cacao is confused. They can what is the real story of what's going on?
Yeah.
And I wonder, I was thinking at the end, while you were talking in the last episode, I wonder if people who are involved in the production of cacao are starting to ask questions that the generations before them did not ask. And that's leading to a shift in the volatility of different things. Now, I know that you said, the people who are growing cacao, information and knowledge is something that's difficult to get access to. But having said that, farmers are amongst the smartest people I've ever met.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that farming worked really well when farmers thought that they were creating food for the world and that they were feeding people. And now I think farmers realize they're getting fucked with.
Yeah.
And I don't think that farmers are okay with that.
No, but then it's very interesting. I can give you an example of a farmer. I met this guy, and he's like, I produce cacao, but when I sell my cacao, the money that I get, it is not enough to survive. So then the question is like, how much money you need to survive? And then this knowledge is super rich because it means like this person understands how much it can produce and what are the possibilities for his family or her family to survive with this amount of cacao. So that's a base in what we can trust, and that, of course, is not solid, and it can have like corn can be more expensive, or rent your house can be more expensive. But however, the movement of your economy, let's say, is more solid than just to say cacao is this price or this price. So this person is telling me to live my life, I need $5 per kilo. I'm just telling you a number. So from there, we can negotiate, right? Because quality, because this, and because that. But until now, the producers are very conscious that they are producing something and not making money on.
Right.
But the system, it's so broken that we are educated. When we buy something, we are educated to buy something with the best advantage we can have, meaning quality, meaning size, meaning volume, meaning whatever, at the cheapest price. We are educated for that. Like the society is educated for that. So meaning you cannot ask a multinational to be fair with the price of the cacao we are paying. To who, and then when you go to Africa, because you were talking about Africa before, the reality is extremely complex, like at every level, meaning that producer, to give you an example, the same producer that I was telling you is like, I would love to tell you cacao, and I am very happy to buy cacao to this producer. But for me to buy cacao to this producer, it means that we're going to pass for 10 persons. So I cannot give the money to this person because we need to, he need to give the cacao to the coyote, and the coyote already tricked his his scale, and then the cooperative is already another relationship with this person, and then the truck bringing the cacao to the warehouse, and then in the warehouse, and you lose the faith sometimes. And
that's all the people that are involved in it. Like, it's not just the farmer that's involved in creating the cacao, and everybody seems to want, they think that they're adding value and they deserve a little bit extra. And it seems like everyone's getting paid for their little bit extra that they add to the value.
Yeah.
But the producer's not getting it doesn't exist without the producer.
Yeah.
Nobody else gets paid if the producer doesn't create this thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like when you rent a container when you're going to export cacao in a normal boat, you bring cacao in a container. These big companies these are massive companies, multinationals who own the container, right? And these companies, they know what is their cost for the container, to put the container, to close the container and to put it in the port. And the boat who export the cacao, it knows what is the cost for moving this thing and making money, the other company making money. We as an importers, we understand how much money we put when we buy cacao and we resell cacao, because our system is very complex, but we understand like where is our money going.
Right.
A lot of the producers, they understand also, but they are not capable to make money. It's very interesting. So again, it's pretty weak.
The game is rigged.
Yeah.
The game is rigged.
Yeah.
Again, I go back to the parasite, right? We keep the producer alive enough so that he keeps making the cacao.
Exactly.
But everybody else is the ones that are really winning from this situation. It's the shadow industry.
Yeah, and it's not and it's not fair, and it's very hard. It's very hard
at all
for everybody in the value chain, making it for real, playing the game in a high level and making it for real.
Yeah.
Or you are not making it, you're not playing the game, you are just like making money, and making money is not sustainable. It's going to happen, but for real, meaning that today's cacao, tomorrow is going to be beans, and the next day is going to be plastic. So
they just move on.
It's going to keep in the time. If you're making it at a high level, you want to be there in the time. Maybe not you as a person, but the system, you want a system that works for everybody in the value chain. So when you're in the value chain, you know when something is not working good.
Not right.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you don't have the exact numbers, but you know that the chocolate maker, ourselves, the farmer, the truck, the container, somebody's not necessary maybe in that chain. That's beautiful when we can cut things like that.
Yeah, but also there's like, you look at what's going on in Ghana, and we'll talk about that in a future episode, but you look at what's going on in Ghana and how the prices are at the rules from before that restricted the price that you could sell cacao at, and how that hasn't been adjusted now that the price has skyrocketed to what it is. The Ghanaian farmers are not benefiting from this, and there's some fuckery that's allegedly going on there, and it's something that we could discuss in a future episode. But we're going to wrap this episode up, and in the next episode we're going to talk about what specialty cacao is. So join us for that episode, folks. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward.